Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into one of the most powerful and mysterious families in American history, the Kennedys. Picture this: a sprawling estate, shimmering with wealth and ambition, yet haunted by a long line of tragedies and triumphs. You're about to get a peek behind the curtain of their captivating story. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this, at least emotionally. The Kennedys are a powerful family whose bloodlines seem woven with ambition, tragedy, and, at times, sheer bad luck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, don't hit it just because I asked. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I love hearing from you all. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Kennedy legacy begins with Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., a man who truly lived by the motto "Fortune favors the bold." Born in 1888 to a working-class family in Boston, Joseph quickly proved that he wasn't destined for an ordinary life. A self-made millionaire by the age of 40, he didn't just settle for financial success. Oh no, he set his sights much higher. He was a master manipulator of both Wall Street and politics, using his wealth to position himself as a key player in the corridors of power. He didn't just want to be rich, he wanted to be influential, not just wealthy, but a name people would recognize in every political corner of the country. A figure who could broker deals, influence policy, and hold sway over government decisions. Joseph wasn't just another businessman. His ambition was so large that he aimed for something even bigger: the White House. And what better way to achieve that than to get his children into positions of power? From an early age, the Kennedy children were trained to be political heavyweights. Joseph had a dream, an obsession, really, that his sons would someday occupy the highest offices in the land. It wasn't just about creating a legacy of wealth. It was about creating a dynasty of power. Joseph believed in the American political system's promise of upward mobility, but he wasn't content with the regular route. Instead, he envisioned a direct path to the pinnacle, using his fortune to carve out a place in the White House. As he climbed the social ladder, Joseph became a key figure in Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration, eventually becoming the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom. This move wasn't just about serving the country, it was also a calculated step towards securing the Kennedy name on the world stage. His time in Britain during the tumultuous prelude to World War II would shape his views on the future, particularly regarding his sons. Joseph's time in London, witnessing the rising political tensions, only solidified his belief in the need for his family's involvement in global affairs. But Joseph's career wasn't all smooth sailing. Along with his political and financial rise came moments of scandal, controversy, and ethical compromise. As a businessman, he made bold moves, sometimes pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in terms of business ethics. He was involved in bootlegging during Prohibition, and his political alliances were often seen as opportunistic. This blend of ambition, moral flexibility, and wealth set a foundation for the Kennedy family that would be fraught with both great triumphs and heart-wrenching tragedies. Joseph P. Kennedy was the embodiment of the American dream, but not in the traditional sense. His version was built on calculated risks and bold decisions, which were often morally ambiguous but undeniably effective. Historians still argue whether his drive to see his sons in politics was fueled by patriotism, personal ambition, or perhaps a little of both. Some say that Joseph genuinely wanted to contribute to the American political system, while others suggest that he was driven more by a desire for power and recognition for himself and his family. Either way, his ambitions were crystal clear. Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. was determined to create a political dynasty that would rival the best of them. His eldest son, Joseph Kennedy Jr., was his first hope, but fate would intervene in ways no one could have anticipated. The loss of Joseph Jr. in 1944 during a World War II bombing mission was a devastating blow to the Kennedy family. At the time, Joseph Sr. had been grooming his son to take up the mantle of political leadership, and Joseph Jr.'s untimely death shattered those plans. The event would mark the first of many tragic moments in the family's history, but it also laid the groundwork for a shift in focus. Joseph Sr. turned his attention to his second son, John Fitzgerald Kennedy JFK, who would go on to become the face of the Kennedy legacy in politics. Joseph Sr.'s relentless drive didn't stop with the death of his first son. It merely recalibrated the family's trajectory. John F. Kennedy, despite his father's larger-than-life expectations, carved his own path in politics. With his natural charisma, sharp intellect, and a background of privileged education, JFK quickly became the darling of American politics. He was young, he was charming, and he had the aura of a leader. His political rise, first as a congressman and later as a senator, was meteoric. JFK's election as President of the United States in 1960 seemed to be the culmination of Joseph's dreams for his family. But the Kennedy legacy wasn't built solely on ambition and achievement. It was also deeply marked by tragedy. The Kennedy family's story became a public spectacle of triumphs, intertwined with personal losses, each one feeding into the mythic tale of the Kennedy curse, a theory that many have debated over the years. Was there something about the Kennedy bloodline that invited tragedy? Was the family doomed to suffer a series of unfortunate events? Or was it just a matter of high-profile public lives attracting more than their fair share of scrutiny and heartache? Historians, biographers, and family members have long debated the true nature of the Kennedy legacy. Was Joseph P. Kennedy's ambition a sign of incredible foresight? Or was it the hubris of a man who sought more than the world was willing to give? Did the Kennedys suffer because they sought power? Or were they simply unlucky? These questions linger as we explore the lives of the Kennedys, particularly the way their legacy grew from Joseph Sr.'s vision and ambition into something far bigger and far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. had a singular vision: his family would rule the political landscape of America. And in his mind, that vision began with his eldest son, Joseph Jr. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Joseph Jr.'s tragic death in 1944 while serving as a naval aviator during World War II marked a devastating blow not only to his father's plans, but to the family's future prospects. With Joseph Jr. gone, Joseph Sr. was left with no choice but to refocus his efforts on his second son, John F. Kennedy, or JFK, who would go on to become one of the most iconic figures in American history. JFK was everything his father had envisioned: a man destined for greatness, with charisma, intelligence, and an unwavering sense of duty. From a young age, JFK was a natural leader, and his educational background, including his time at Harvard University, helped sharpen the political skills that would eventually propel him to the highest office in the land. His path to the presidency, however, wasn't without its challenges. Despite his political pedigree and family wealth, JFK had to work tirelessly to establish his own credibility. But what really set him apart was his ability to connect with the American people in a way that few politicians ever could. Historians still argue about the precise nature of JFK's political appeal. Was it his charm, his policies, or perhaps the Kennedy mystique itself of family with ambition, wealth, and an almost otherworldly sense of purpose? Regardless, JFK's election to the presidency in 1960 was a momentous occasion that represented the fulfillment of his father's lifelong dream. Joseph Sr. could finally rest easy, knowing that his family had reached the pinnacle of American power. But as with most things in the Kennedy family, the road to success was paved with both triumph and tragedy. While JFK's rise to the presidency represented the ultimate accomplishment for his father, it also signaled the beginning of a turbulent era for the family. The early years of JFK's presidency were marked by political maneuvering, Cold War tensions, and the Cuban Missile Crisis moments that tested his resolve and leadership. However, the greatest test came on November 22, 1963, when JFK was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, leaving the country and his family reeling. The assassination of President Kennedy was a moment that would change the trajectory of not just the Kennedy family, but the entire nation. The Kennedy family was shattered by JFK's death, but even in the face of such unimaginable loss, the family did not shrink away from public life. Instead, they stepped forward, with each member becoming more involved in political and public service. The assassination of JFK marked the beginning of what many would call the end of the golden age of the Kennedy dynasty. It was a turning point, a moment that signaled the family's lasting imprint on American politics, but also their vulnerability to tragedy. Following JFK's death, Robert F. Kennedy, or RFK, quickly emerged as the next hope for the family's political future. Robert was no stranger to the demands of public life. As JFK's Attorney General, he had been deeply involved in the civil rights movement and had earned a reputation as a tireless fighter for justice. But Robert's path was not without its own challenges. He faced immense personal and political obstacles, and his decision to run for president in 1968 was seen as both a continuation of his brother's legacy and a bold step toward charting his own political future. However, as with so many other members of the Kennedy family, tragedy would strike again. On June 5, 1968, Robert Kennedy was assassinated while campaigning for the presidency. His death, just months after Martin Luther King Jr., his assassination marked a turning point in American history. The nation was plunged into mourning once more, and the Kennedy family found itself at the heart of yet another public tragedy. RFK's assassination further cemented the family's status as icons of American political life, but it also served as a reminder of the personal costs of ambition. Historians still debate the larger implications of RFK's death on the Kennedy legacy. Was it a mere coincidence? Or was there something about the Kennedy name that attracted misfortune? The idea of the Kennedy curse began to take hold in the public imagination, with many believing that tragedy followed the family wherever they went. Some have pointed to the intense pressures placed on the Kennedys, both by their own expectations and those of the public, as the root cause of their misfortune. Others argue that the family simply faced the same tragic events that could happen to any powerful family, amplified by their public stature. The political career of Ted Kennedy, the youngest of Joseph Sr.'s sons, was, in many ways, a continuation of the family's quest for political power. Ted, who had long been overshadowed by his older brothers, found himself thrust into the public eye following JFK's assassination. While his path to prominence was more tumultuous and marked by personal controversies, including the Chappaquiddick incident, Ted Kennedy managed to carve out a long and influential political career. His work in the Senate, particularly in areas of healthcare and civil rights, made him one of the most respected figures in American politics, even as his personal life remained the subject of intense scrutiny. But despite his successes, Ted Kennedy was never able to completely escape the shadow of his brothers. His political career was forever tainted by the specter of tragedy that had plagued his family. Yet, he remained a figure of endurance, using his power to fight for causes he believed in, all the while carrying the weight of the family's past. As the years passed, the next generation of Kennedys emerged, with figures like Caroline Kennedy and John F. Kennedy Jr. stepping into the limelight. Both children of JFK, they were groomed to continue the family legacy, but their path was fraught with the same obstacles and tragedies that had defined their parents' lives. The early death of John Jr. in a plane crash in 1999 was yet another reminder of the family's continued struggles with fate. His untimely death, much like those of his uncles, seemed to reaffirm the idea of a Kennedy curse, a family whose bloodline was both blessed and cursed by ambition, tragedy, and public scrutiny. Historians still debate the notion of the Kennedy curse. Is there any truth to it? Or is it simply a result of the intense public focus on the family? Some argue that the tragic events surrounding the Kennedys were simply a product of circumstance, while others point to the relentless pressure of being part of such an iconic family as the cause of their personal misfortunes. As we've seen, the Kennedy family's story is one that combines the dizzying heights of success with the crushing depths of tragedy. Yet, in the aftermath of so much loss, the Kennedys continued to define and influence the political landscape of America. Their legacy, built on the shoulders of Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., continued to grow even as they faced unparalleled hardships. It's fascinating how, despite losing 2 sons to tragic assassinations, Joseph Sr.'s vision for his family's power never truly faltered. Instead, it evolved with each generation. The next generation of Kennedys, particularly the children of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, took on the mantle of their father's legacy in unique ways. Caroline Kennedy, the only surviving child of JFK and Jackie, became a figure of immense interest to the public. While she didn't choose a political path immediately, Caroline's involvement in public life grew over time. A lawyer and writer, she entered the political sphere as a U.S. ambassador to Japan under President Obama. In her quiet but determined way, she carried on the family's commitment to public service, becoming a respected figure in her own right. Then there was John F. Kennedy Jr., a man whose life seemed poised to continue the Kennedy legacy in politics. As the son of a beloved president, he was born with an aura of potential and promise. His early years were marked by public fascination. He was charming, handsome, and effortlessly cool. It seemed like the natural path for him would be a career in politics, stepping into the spotlight to fill the void left by his father's assassination. But John Jr. was different. Though many expected him to pursue a political career, he chose instead to chart his own course. He became a successful magazine publisher, founding George Magazine, which was notable for its unique combination of politics and pop culture. John Jr. sought to bridge the gap between the political elite and the average American, often using his platform to speak out on issues that mattered to him. Historians still debate whether John Jr. ever truly had the political aspirations his family expected. Was he hesitant to enter politics because of the legacy of loss that came with it? Or did he simply prefer the freedom of the private sector? His decision to remain outside of politics may have been a response to the heavy expectations placed upon him since birth. He seemed to want to live his own life, separate from the weight of the Kennedy name. Still, the public always viewed him through the lens of his father's legacy, and his untimely death in a plane crash in 1999 would only deepen the association between the Kennedys and tragedy. The crash, in which John Jr. died alongside his wife and sister-in-law, was a devastating blow to the family. For many, it seemed like another chapter in the tragic saga of the Kennedy family. And once again, the specter of the Kennedy curse loomed large. The family was beset by another loss, and many began to wonder whether there was something supernatural or perhaps something uniquely tragic about their bloodline. Despite this, the Kennedy family continued to exert significant political influence, particularly through their involvement in the Democratic Party. Ted Kennedy, who had weathered so many personal and public storms, became a towering figure in American politics. His long tenure in the U.S. Senate saw him champion numerous causes, including healthcare reform, immigration, and civil rights. Ted's work, particularly his role in passing the Affordable Care Act, solidified his status as one of the most respected figures in American politics. Though he never achieved the presidency that seemed so within reach for his family, Ted's legacy was cemented in the history books as one of the most influential senators in U.S. history. But for all his political successes, Ted's personal life was fraught with scandal and heartache. The Chappaquiddick incident, in which Ted was involved in a car accident that led to the death of Mary Jo Kopechne, remained a dark cloud over his career. Though he was never charged with her death, the incident, along with his other personal challenges, continued to haunt him throughout his life. Yet, despite these setbacks, Ted Kennedy persevered, and his political influence remained undeniable until his death in 2009. As the Kennedy family moved into the 21st century, their influence seemed to ebb and flow with the rise and fall of public interest in their saga. The legacy of the Kennedys, built on both the triumphs and tragedies of the past, continued to inspire and fascinate. Today, the family remains involved in public life, though their political power has significantly waned. The days when a Kennedy was a guaranteed contender for the White House seem distant. Yet the family's commitment to service and advocacy lives on through figures like Caroline Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert Jr., the son of RFK, has been one of the most vocal members of the family in recent years, known for his advocacy on environmental issues, particularly his work with the Waterkeeper Alliance. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has carved out a niche for himself as an environmental activist, though he has often been compared to his father and uncle, JFK. He has built his own path, one that is far from the traditional political arena, yet deeply connected to the Kennedy legacy of social justice and public service. His run for the presidency in 2024 as a candidate for the Democratic Party shocked many. While his political platform is far removed from the establishment, his campaign once again thrusts the Kennedy name into the national spotlight. Robert Jr.'s entry into the race, although unconventional, highlights the continued relevance of the Kennedy legacy in American politics. Whether or not he wins, his campaign will undoubtedly be remembered as another chapter in the Kennedy family's long and storied political history. Historians continue to debate the lasting impact of the Kennedy family on American politics. Were they a symbol of hope, change, and ambition? Or did they simply serve as a cautionary tale of how tragedy can overshadow even the brightest of political careers? The answer, as always with the Kennedys, remains complex. What is clear is that the family's bloodlines of power, shaped by immense fortune, unrelenting ambition, and unthinkable loss, have left an indelible mark on American history. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963 remains one of the most defining moments of the 20th century. The shockwaves from that event not only reverberated throughout America, but sent a tidal wave of grief and confusion across the globe. JFK's death, so sudden and violent, forever altered the political landscape, but it also cemented his place in American mythology. Despite his presidency being cut short, Kennedy's ideals, his vision for a new frontier, and his call for public service continued to resonate with the American people long after his death. For the Kennedy family, the pain was not just national, it was intensely personal. His widow, Jacqueline Kennedy, a fashion icon and a symbol of grace under pressure, became a widow in front of the world's eyes. Her composed demeanor during the funeral was a masterclass in restraint and composure. But beneath the public face, the loss was utterly devastating. Jacqueline's role in the aftermath of her husband's assassination would further shape the public perception of the Kennedy family as not only political figures, but as a dynasty under siege by fate. Historians still debate the emotional toll the loss had on the family, especially on Robert F. Kennedy, JFK's younger brother. Robert had always been close to his brother, working alongside him as Attorney General during the Kennedy administration. After John's death, Robert became the family's primary spokesman and protector, stepping into the breach with a new sense of purpose. He sought to carry on JFK's legacy, fighting for civil rights, poverty reduction, and social justice. But as Robert became more entrenched in the political scene, he found himself drawn into his own battle this time to win the presidency. He announced his candidacy for the 1968 presidential election, an attempt to rally a divided America around the values his brother had championed. His campaign, however, was tragically short-lived. On June 5, 1968, Robert was assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan in Los Angeles, mere moments after delivering a victory speech following his win in California's Democratic primary. The impact of RFK's death cannot be overstated. His assassination, only 5 years after his brother's, seemed to confirm the darkest rumors about the Kennedy family that they were cursed, doomed to suffer unimaginable losses. The public began to view the family with a mix of awe and pity. The myth of the Kennedy curse took root, and for many, it was hard to separate the family's political achievements from the shadow of their personal tragedies. In the wake of RFK's death, the family was left reeling. Once again, the Kennedy name was at the forefront of national conversation, but not for the reasons anyone had hoped. And yet, in this time of profound grief, Ted Kennedy, the youngest of Joseph Sr.'s sons, emerged as the family's anchor. Ted, who had long struggled to escape the shadows of his older brothers, found himself in the spotlight as the next hope for the Kennedy legacy. Ted Kennedy's life was complicated. His political career in the U.S. Senate spanned decades, and while he became known for his staunch advocacy on issues like healthcare reform and civil rights, his personal life remained marred by controversy. The most notable event that would shape his public perception was the 1969 Chappaquiddick incident, in which Ted drove his car off a bridge, leading to the death of his passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne. While Ted survived the incident, the scandal remained a dark stain on his political career for the rest of his life. Despite this, Ted Kennedy continued to be a major force in American politics. He championed progressive causes, working to pass significant legislation, including the Americans with Disabilities Act, and played a pivotal role in the successful passage of the Affordable Care Act in the 2000s. His personal struggles and public missteps only seemed to humanize him further, allowing him to connect with American voters on a more personal level. Yet, no matter how successful Ted was, the weight of his family's history, particularly the repeated tragedies, always hung over him. The public's perception of Ted, and indeed of all the Kennedys, was forever intertwined with their past. Ted's death in 2009 marked the end of an era for the Kennedy family. After his passing, the family's influence in national politics began to wane. No longer could a Kennedy be counted on to be a serious contender for the presidency. Yet, the legacy of the Kennedys, especially their contributions to civil rights, education, and healthcare, remained etched in the American consciousness. The next generation of Kennedys has continued to make its mark in different ways. Caroline Kennedy, JFK's daughter, has quietly carved a place for herself in public service, serving as the U.S. ambassador to Japan under President Obama. Though she has never fully embraced the political spotlight, Caroline has always remained a fixture in the public eye, embodying the grace and dignity of her mother, Jacqueline John F. Kennedy Jr., who seemed destined for a political career, took a different path. Known for his charm, good looks, and social standing, John Jr. became a media darling. He founded George Magazine, a publication that blended politics and celebrity in an attempt to reach a younger, more diverse audience. It was an attempt to bridge the gap between politics and pop culture, a notion that was ahead of its time. But as with all things Kennedy, John Jr.'s life was cut tragically short. In July 1999, he died in a plane crash along with his wife and sister-in-law. His untimely death was a devastating blow to the family. And once again, the Kennedy curse was invoked. In the years since, the Kennedy family's political influence has diminished, but the name still carries weight. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has become known for his environmental activism, particularly in his role with the Waterkeeper Alliance, has remained a prominent figure. In 2024, he made a high-profile bid for the presidency, challenging the Democratic establishment. His decision to run, though unconventional, showed that the Kennedy name still holds power in American politics, though not in the way it once did. Historians continue to study the family's legacy, trying to unravel the complex web of ambition, tragedy, and public life that has defined the Kennedys. They continue to ask, was the family doomed by fate, or was it simply the price one must pay for living such public and ambitious lives? Was there truly a Kennedy curse, or was it just a series of unfortunate, albeit public events? Whatever the answer, the Kennedy family has undeniably shaped the course of American history, leaving a legacy of public service, tragedy, and a bloodline of power that remains unmatched. Despite the tragedies that befell the Kennedy family, their influence over American politics and culture has remained undeniable. The Kennedy curse has often been mentioned in hushed tones, but the legacy of the family, both the accomplishments and the calamities, has left a profound mark on history. The saga of this family is more than a tale of ambition, misfortune, and legacy. It's a reflection of the American dream itself, one that rises to great heights and crashes down with equal force. But even in the face of repeated heartbreak, the Kennedys have persevered, proving time and time again that they are far from being defined solely by their tragedies. As we've seen, the power of the Kennedy name extended far beyond politics. Their influence reached into the realms of culture, entertainment, and public life. John F. Kennedy's presidency, though short-lived, was marked by an inspiring vision for the future. His famous words, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," became a rallying cry for a generation. The ethos of public service, of striving to make the world a better place, became synonymous with the Kennedy name. His establishment of the Peace Corps and his leadership during the Cuban Missile Crisis highlighted a vision of diplomacy, leadership, and international cooperation that resonated around the world. But JFK's presidency was not just about foreign policy. It was also about the domestic challenges that faced the country. His administration sought to tackle the issue of civil rights, setting the stage for landmark legislation under Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy's tragic death may have cut short his ability to fully implement his vision, but his ideals continued to inspire those who followed. His brother, Robert F. Kennedy, who was deeply involved in the civil rights movement, became a central figure in the push for justice and equality. RFK's legacy, though tragically shortened by his assassination, has continued to inspire political movements to this day. Robert's passion for social justice, civil rights, and his efforts to combat poverty left an indelible mark on the American political landscape. His candidacy for the presidency in 1968 was seen as a continuation of JFK's vision, and though it was not to be, his platform set the stage for future political movements centered on justice, equality, and human rights. While RFK's tragic death at the hands of an assassin's bullet may have ended his political career, it also solidified his place as a martyr for the cause of social change. Much like his brother, Robert became an enduring symbol of the hopes and dreams of a nation that sought a better, fairer future. His death left a hole in the political landscape, but it also ignited the flame of activism, pushing the nation toward greater focus on civil rights, healthcare, and poverty alleviation. His name, like his brother's, would become synonymous with those ideals. Ted Kennedy, who had always lived in the shadow of his brothers, eventually carved out his own path as a senator, known for his work in pushing for comprehensive healthcare reform and his support of civil rights. Ted's political career lasted for decades. Even as his personal life was often clouded by scandal and controversy, his impact in the Senate was undeniable. His ability to forge alliances, his knowledge of policy, and his dedication to public service made him one of the longest-serving and most influential senators in U.S. history. Ted's work on healthcare reform, especially, shaped the modern American healthcare system and would influence many future policy debates. But Ted Kennedy's career, too, was marked by personal tragedy. While he had achieved success in the political realm, his family's struggles, particularly with the deaths of his brothers and the impact of Chappaquiddick, followed him throughout his life. Despite these challenges, Ted never wavered from his commitment to service. His passion for policy, especially on issues like healthcare and immigration, kept him at the center of American politics well into the 21st century. His death in 2009 marked the end of an era, but his legacy continues to be honored today, particularly in the areas of health policy and public service. As the years passed and the next generation of Kennedys grew up, they faced their own set of challenges. Caroline Kennedy, JFK's only surviving child, was a prominent public figure in her own right. Although she did not follow the direct political path her father had laid out, she played a critical role in the cultural and intellectual landscape of America. Caroline served as a lawyer, author, and diplomat, and later as U.S. ambassador to Japan under President Obama. While she was never a direct contender for high office, Caroline became a symbol of the Kennedy family's enduring commitment to public service, embodying the grace and determination of her mother, Jacqueline. John F. Kennedy Jr. had all the makings of a political dynasty heir: handsome, charismatic, and incredibly well-connected. John Jr. seemed poised to take up his family's mantle. However, he defied expectations by pursuing a career in publishing, founding George Magazine, which combined politics and pop culture in a way no one had done before. Many wondered if John Jr. might eventually enter politics, but he was determined to carve out his own identity. His tragic death in a plane crash in 1999 marked the end of a promising chapter for the family, further adding to the mythology of the Kennedy curse. But even after his untimely death, the Kennedy name continued to loom large in American politics. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., known for his environmental activism, has become one of the most vocal members of the family. His role in advocating for the environment and his leadership in organizations like the Waterkeeper Alliance has kept the Kennedy legacy alive in a new context. In 2024, Robert Jr. made waves by announcing his candidacy for the U.S. presidency, running on a platform that included his distinctive blend of environmental activism and anti-establishment rhetoric. His decision to run was seen by many as an effort to continue the Kennedy legacy, albeit in a different form. The question remains, how does one define the legacy of the Kennedy family? Is it their political influence, their social advocacy, or their sheer resilience in the face of personal and public tragedy? The answer, of course, is a combination of all these things. The Kennedys may have been cursed by tragedy, but they have also been blessed with an enduring influence that continues to shape American politics and culture. Historians still argue about the true nature of the Kennedy family's impact. Was their success in politics a result of sheer ambition, or did they embody the ideals of service and public good? Did they continue to rise above their personal losses because of their powerful family bond? Or was it simply their relentless pursuit of greatness that pushed them forward? Despite the odds, the Kennedys, for all their flaws and misfortunes, have remained symbols of perseverance, of the enduring hope that even in the face of great loss, one can continue to push forward and make a difference. The Kennedy family's story is inextricably linked to the idea of legacy, their own personal legacies, their collective legacy as a family, and their enduring impact on American politics and culture. But as the years went on, the narrative of the Kennedys began to shift. While their political influence remained significant, the family had to confront the fact that their bloodline, long associated with political power and ambition, was facing an uncertain future. The public's interest in the Kennedys had never waned, but the political and social landscape of America had evolved, and the family that once seemed destined for the White House seemed less likely to maintain its stranglehold on the American political stage following the tragic deaths of JFK, RFK, and John F. Kennedy Jr. The family's future seemed uncertain. Yet, the story of the Kennedys is also a story of reinvention, of adapting and finding new ways to remain relevant. In the face of such profound loss, the surviving members of the family, especially Ted Kennedy, continued to champion public service, ensuring that their influence would not fade. Ted's long and distinguished career in the U.S. Senate, marked by his advocacy for social causes such as healthcare reform, education, and civil rights, proved that while the political landscape was changing, the Kennedys' commitment to public service remained as strong as ever. The notion of the Kennedy curse continued to loom large over the family, but there was also a growing recognition that the tragedies that befell the Kennedys, while undeniably painful, did not define the entirety of their history. The family's continued commitment to public service, especially in areas like healthcare, civil rights, and education, painted a different picture of the Kennedys, one that was marked not only by misfortune, but also by triumph and resilience. As time went on, the focus of the Kennedy family's efforts shifted somewhat. The younger generation, like Caroline Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., began to take on more visible roles in public life, albeit in different ways. Caroline, who had served as a lawyer, author, and diplomat, became the U.S. ambassador to Japan under President Barack Obama. Her quiet but steady dedication to public service demonstrated the continuing relevance of the Kennedy name. Even as the political stage had evolved beyond the days when a Kennedy was expected to run for president, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., meanwhile, focused his efforts on environmental activism. Known for his work with the Waterkeeper Alliance, Robert Jr. has become a prominent advocate for the environment, standing up to corporate polluters and working to protect natural resources. While his path to prominence diverged from the more traditional political route, his commitment to social justice and the environment aligned with the values his father and uncle, JFK, had championed. However, the 2024 announcement that Robert Jr. would run for president shook the political establishment and sparked intense debate about the future of the Kennedy legacy. Robert's presidential run, though unconventional, was yet another chapter in the ongoing story of the Kennedy family's complicated and ever-evolving relationship with politics. His campaign has drawn attention not only because of his name, but also because of the issues he champions. Running on a platform focused heavily on environmental concerns, corporate accountability, and political reform, Robert Jr. positioned himself as an outsider, challenging the entrenched political class and promising a new direction for America. His decision to run for the highest office in the land was both an attempt to revive the Kennedy political legacy and to reshape it for the 21st century. Whether he succeeds or not, his candidacy further proves that, even in a new political era, the Kennedy name continues to hold significant weight. However, Robert Jr. His run for president is not the only way in which the family continues to remain relevant. Caroline Kennedy's continued role as an advocate for public service and diplomacy, her longtime involvement in educational and cultural initiatives, and her work with various philanthropic organizations demonstrate that the Kennedy name still carries a deep sense of duty to the public good. While Caroline has avoided the political spotlight in the traditional sense, her efforts to serve in different capacities from her ambassadorship to her philanthropic endeavors reaffirm the commitment to public service that has long been a hallmark of the Kennedy family. This shift in focus from traditional politics to activism, diplomacy, and public service reflects the changing tides of American politics, where legacy is no longer solely defined by political office, but by the ability to affect change in other areas. The Kennedy family's influence now extends far beyond the corridors of Washington, D.C., and into the world of global diplomacy, environmentalism, and social justice. It's a shift that, in some ways, distances the Kennedys from their tragic past and repositions them as figures of hope and action, rather than symbols of loss and victimhood. Yet, despite the family's growing involvement in new areas of public life, it's impossible to separate the Kennedys from the tragedies that have defined them. The untimely deaths of JFK, RFK, and John F. Kennedy Jr. will always be a part of the family's narrative. But even these tragedies, rather than diminishing the family's influence, have added to the mythos surrounding the Kennedys. The combination of ambition, tragedy, and public service has made the Kennedy story one of the most compelling and enduring in American history. Historians still debate the extent to which the tragedies of the Kennedy family's past shaped the way they operated in the present. Was the family's resilience in the face of such loss a sign of strength? Or did it create a sense of inevitability, a notion that the Kennedys were fated to endure such hardships? Whatever the answer, the Kennedy family's commitment to public service and their enduring legacy cannot be denied. They have remained a central force in American life, adapting to new challenges while staying true to their ideals. As the future of the Kennedy family continues to unfold, the public's fascination with their story remains as strong as ever. Whether it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s run for the presidency, or Caroline Kennedy's ongoing work in diplomacy, the Kennedys continue to make their mark on the world in ways both big and small. And while the family's influence may no longer be as dominant as it once was, the spirit of public service, resilience, and commitment to justice that began with Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and continued through his sons and their descendants lives on. The Kennedy dynasty may not rule the political scene as it once did, but its impact will be felt for generations to come. Robert F. Kennedy's story is a testament to both the heights of political ambition and the depths of personal tragedy that define the Kennedy family legacy. After JFK's assassination in 1963, Robert stepped into the spotlight, quickly becoming the family's leading political figure. As Attorney General under his brother's administration, RFK was a formidable force in the fight against organized crime and a passionate advocate for civil rights. His fiery speeches and tireless work made him a symbol of hope for many Americans during the turbulent 1960s. But Robert was more than just a political powerhouse. He was also a man deeply affected by the loss and hardship within his own family. The Kennedy tragedies shaped his worldview, driving his commitment to justice and equality. His public persona was one of courage and determination, but those closest to him knew a more complex side, a man wrestling with grief, guilt, and the enormous expectations placed upon him. His political journey was marked by this tension, a mix of public triumphs and private struggles. The 1968 presidential campaign was perhaps Robert's most passionate effort to fulfill the promise of the Kennedy legacy. His vision for America included greater racial equality, an end to the Vietnam War, and economic justice. In many ways, RFK was the embodiment of the hopes of a generation seeking change. His speeches inspired countless Americans, and his candidacy energized the Democratic Party. However, the violence that shook the country that year, the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and RFK himself, dealt a cruel blow to those dreams. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy on June 5, 1968 shocked the nation once again. Shot at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, moments after claiming victory in the California Democratic primary. RFK's death was a devastating loss, not just for the Kennedy family, but for the entire country. The nation mourned alongside the Kennedys, and the hope that had surrounded his campaign turned into profound sorrow. His death felt like the closing of a tragic chapter in a story that seemed never-ending. Historians still debate the circumstances surrounding RFK's assassination. Some focus on the political climate of the 1960s, a period fraught with social unrest and radical change, which made political violence more common. Others question the motivations and background of his assassin, Sirhan Sirhan, and the extent to which larger forces may have been involved. This debate mirrors the larger questions about the Kennedy family's place in American history. Were they victims of a broader political reckoning, or was there something uniquely targeted about their family? In the wake of RFK's death, the Kennedy family was left to grapple with grief and the pressure to carry on the family's political legacy. Ted Kennedy, the youngest brother, was the natural successor, but his path was far from smooth. Ted faced enormous challenges, both personal and political, that tested his resilience and commitment to public service. Despite his flaws, Ted Kennedy's career in the U.S. Senate became a defining element of the Kennedy legacy for decades. Ted's political influence was immense. He served in the Senate for nearly 47 years, championing causes such as healthcare reform, education, and civil rights. His work helped shape some of the most significant legislation of the late 20th century, including the Americans with Disabilities Act and efforts to reform immigration policy. Ted was known as the Lion of the Senate for his passionate advocacy and ability to build coalitions across party lines. Yet, Ted Kennedy's personal life was marked by controversy. The Chappaquiddick incident, in which a car he was driving went off a bridge resulting in the death of Mary Jo Kopechne, cast a long shadow over his career. The scandal raised questions about his character and judgment, and some believe it cost him a potential presidential run. Regardless, Ted persevered, focusing on his work in the Senate and his commitment to the public good. The deaths of JFK and RFK left a void that was never fully filled by Ted, but he remained the family's political standard-bearer until his death in 2009. His long career was a testament to both his strengths and weaknesses, and to the complicated legacy of the Kennedy family marked by ambition, public service, scandal, and tragedy. The younger generation of Kennedys, including Caroline and John F. Kennedy Jr., faced the burden of their family's history as they sought their own paths. Caroline Kennedy, with her diplomatic career and work in education, represents the quieter, more measured side of the family legacy. John Jr., however, captured the public's imagination with his good looks, charm, and media ventures. His tragic death in 1999 in a plane crash was another blow to a family that had already endured so much loss. The legacy of Robert F. Kennedy remains a powerful symbol of hope and activism in America. His commitment to social justice and equality continues to inspire new generations, and his life's work stands as a reminder of both the possibilities and perils of political life. The Kennedy family's story, marked by profound loss but also remarkable resilience, continues to resonate today. Ted Kennedy's long career is a fascinating study in contrasts marked by both remarkable legislative achievements and deeply personal struggles. His political journey wasn't a smooth road paved only with successes. It was a winding path, often shadowed by family tragedy and personal controversy. Yet, through it all, Ted remained a steadfast figure in American politics, an embodiment of the Kennedy resilience that has become so legendary. Ted was the youngest of the Kennedy brothers, often overshadowed by the larger-than-life figures of JFK and RFK. But after their untimely deaths, Ted found himself thrust into the spotlight as the primary torchbearer of the Kennedy political dynasty. His Senate career began in 1962 and over nearly 5 decades. He made a lasting impact on legislation and policy, focusing particularly on healthcare, education, and civil rights. But Ted's legacy is also marked by the infamous Chappaquiddick incident in 1969. It's one of those moments that everyone remembers, not just because of the tragic death of Mary Jo Kopechne, but because of the questions it raised about Ted's character and judgment. The circumstances of the accident and his delayed reporting of it stirred controversy and speculation that dogged Ted for years. Some historians argue that Chappaquiddick likely cost Ted the presidency, which many believed was within his reach. Others suggest that despite the scandal, Ted's legislative achievements more than compensated for the political damage. Ted Kennedy's personal life was a roller coaster of highs and lows. While he championed social justice and progressive causes in public, his private struggles with relationships and personal demons were well known. The family's reputation for both glamour and tragedy played out vividly in Ted's life, making him both a sympathetic and sometimes polarizing figure. Despite his controversies, Ted Kennedy earned a reputation as the Lion of the Senate for his ability to work across party lines and advocate passionately for his causes. His efforts helped bring about landmark legislation, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and expansions in healthcare coverage. His dedication to healthcare reform was particularly notable, culminating in his instrumental role in the passage of the Affordable Care Act shortly before his death in 2009. Ted's death marked the end of a remarkable era for the Kennedy family. After nearly 5 decades of public service, his passing was mourned nationwide as the loss of one of America's most dedicated senators. But with Ted gone, the question became who would carry on the Kennedy political legacy. The family's political power had already been waning, and no obvious successor stood ready to take the helm. As the 21st century unfolded, the younger Kennedys, Caroline, John Jr., Robert Jr., and others had to grapple with the expectations and burdens of their family name. Caroline Kennedy, with her quieter diplomatic career, provided a steady presence in public service. John F. Kennedy Jr., with his charisma and media ventures, captured the public imagination but chose a path outside traditional politics. His tragic death in 1999 further cemented the sense of loss surrounding the family. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., on the other hand, embraced activism and environmentalism. Known for his outspoken stance on environmental issues and his leadership in the Waterkeeper Alliance, Robert Jr. represents a different facet of the Kennedy legacy, one focused on advocacy and social responsibility, rather than electoral politics. His 2024 presidential bid has stirred much debate and renewed interest in the Kennedy family's role in American politics. The idea of a Kennedy curse remains a topic of public fascination and scholarly debate. Is the family truly haunted by misfortune, or is their story simply one of high-profile individuals living under intense public scrutiny? Historians argue over whether the tragedy that seems to follow the family is coincidence, consequence, or a reflection of the heavy pressures that come with their name and ambition. Regardless of the debate, Ted Kennedy's life and career remain emblematic of the Kennedy family's enduring influence complex, marked by both human flaws and profound public achievements. His legacy, like that of his brothers, is a mixture of hope, perseverance, and tragedy, woven into the larger tapestry of American history. As time flows on, the next generation of Kennedys began stepping onto the public stage, carrying with them the weight of a family legacy that was as inspiring as it was daunting. These descendants faced a unique challenge to honor the immense political and cultural influence their predecessors had crafted, while trying to forge their own identities away from the shadows of tragedy and expectation. Caroline Kennedy, daughter of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy, epitomizes this delicate balancing act. Unlike her father and uncles, Caroline chose a quieter path, focusing on diplomacy, education, and philanthropy rather than direct political power. With a Harvard education and a law degree from Columbia, she moved with grace through the corridors of public service. Her appointment as the U.S. ambassador to Japan was not just a symbolic nod to her family's legacy, but a substantive role where she worked to strengthen international relations and cultural ties. Her diplomatic style combined a calm professionalism with the understated charisma one might expect from a Kennedy. Historians still debate whether Caroline's decision to avoid electoral politics was a personal choice or a pragmatic response to the immense pressures that had crushed earlier generations. Some suggest that witnessing the tragedies her family endured made her cautious about stepping into the cutthroat world of American politics. Others see her as a modern Kennedy, one who adapts the family's spirit of service to new arenas where influence can be just as potent, if less conspicuous. Meanwhile, John F. Kennedy Jr., often dubbed John by the public, presented a different story. Handsome, charismatic, and photogenic, he became America's most eligible bachelor, a media darling who seemed destined for the presidency or at least a significant political career. Yet, John Jr. famously resisted the pull of electoral politics, instead creating George Magazine, which aimed to merge the worlds of celebrity culture and political discourse. His vision was ahead of its time, anticipating the fusion of entertainment and politics that defines much of today's media landscape. Still, his life was tinged with the shadow of the family curse. John Jr.'s tragic death in 1999 in a small plane crash along with his wife Carolyn Bessette and her sister was a heart-wrenching moment that seemed to seal the Kennedy family's reputation as victims of an unrelenting fate. His loss shocked the world, reminding everyone that the Kennedy story was far from over and still painfully fragile. The younger Kennedys who followed, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., carved paths less defined by politics and more by activism and advocacy. Robert Jr., the eldest son of Robert F. Kennedy, channeled his family's spirit of public service into environmental causes, becoming a leading voice against pollution and corporate malfeasance. His leadership of the Waterkeeper Alliance put him at the forefront of a new kind of Kennedy legacy, one focused on the health of the planet and social justice. Yet, his controversial views on vaccines and politics have drawn sharp criticism and complicated his public image, further fueling debates about the evolving nature of the Kennedy legacy. As Robert Jr. made a surprising run for president in 2024, many observers wondered if this was a revival of the political dynasty or a break from tradition. His candidacy challenged the mainstream political establishment and raised questions about what the Kennedy name means in today's America. Is it still a symbol of liberal hope and progressive reform, or has it morphed into something more complex, reflecting the fractured political landscape of the 21st century? The Kennedy curse remains a persistent myth, but it is worth noting that the family's public tragedies are inseparable from their relentless exposure in the media spotlight. With great visibility comes great vulnerability, and few families have been scrutinized as intensely as the Kennedys. Historians continue to debate whether the so-called curse is simply the byproduct of immense public pressure, political enemies, or the natural risks of a family so deeply involved in high-stakes power struggles. What is undeniable is the family's resilience. Despite repeated losses, the Kennedys have continued to push forward, finding new ways to serve the public and keep their ideals alive. From the hallowed halls of the Senate to environmental activism, from diplomatic missions to media ventures, the bloodline of power runs strong. Yet, it is a power tempered by the lessons of loss and the burden of expectation, a legacy that invites both admiration and reflection. The tragic death of John F. Kennedy Jr. in 1999 was another seismic shock to the Kennedy family and to the nation. His untimely passing, alongside his wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and her sister, Lauren Bessette, in a small plane crash off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, was met with widespread grief and a deep sense of loss. For many, John Jr. represented a new hope for the Kennedy dynasty, someone who could bridge the family's storied past with a more modern, accessible future. John Jr. His life was unlike that of his predecessors in many ways. While born into immense privilege and the weight of a famous name, he sought to forge his own identity, first as a lawyer and then as a journalist and publisher. His founding of George magazine was groundbreaking in its attempt to mix politics with celebrity culture, a precursor to today's media landscape where political discourse is often wrapped in entertainment. He had the charisma and public appeal to be a serious contender for political office, yet he chose to approach the public sphere on his own terms. Historians debate whether John Jr. would have pursued a political career had he lived. Some suggest he deliberately avoided the political arena because he wanted to escape the intense scrutiny that dogged his family. Others argue that he was preparing for a future in politics, but on a different timeline, recognizing that his generation's approach to public service would have to adapt to changing times. Whatever the case, his death in 1999 was a devastating blow, not only to the Kennedy family, but to those who saw in him the possibility of a fresh start for the dynasty. The plane crash itself raised questions and speculations, with investigators ultimately concluding that pilot error and poor weather conditions were the causes. But for many, the tragedy seemed to affirm the dark pattern that had haunted the family for decades. The Kennedy curse was once again invoked, a myth reinforced by the high-profile nature of the loss and the family's history of sudden deaths and assassinations. John Jr.'s death left a void in the Kennedy family and in the broader public consciousness. It marked a turning point in the family's narrative, from one dominated by active political engagement to one more focused on legacy, memory, and the struggle to redefine their place in contemporary America. The family's public role became more varied, with members pursuing careers in activism, diplomacy, and private business, rather than the direct electoral politics that had characterized earlier generations. Caroline Kennedy, for example, took on a more diplomatic role, serving as U.S. ambassador to Japan and engaging in numerous philanthropic efforts. She became a steadying presence in the family, embodying the principles of public service and cultural diplomacy without the intense glare of electoral politics. Her efforts helped sustain the family's reputation for grace and dedication to public good. Meanwhile, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ventured into environmental activism, carving out a niche far from the traditional political paths trod by his father and uncles. His leadership in the fight against pollution and corporate negligence brought the Kennedy name into a new realm of social advocacy. However, his later controversial stances, particularly on vaccines, complicated his public image, reflecting the challenges of maintaining a unified family legacy in a fractured political and social landscape. The Kennedy family's influence today is undeniably different from the height of their power during JFK's presidency. Their direct hold on elected office has diminished, yet their symbolic power endures. The Kennedy name continues to evoke ideas of hope, public service, and tragic sacrifice, a complex tapestry woven from nearly a century of triumphs and heartbreaks. Historians continue to debate the lasting significance of the Kennedys. Some view them as emblematic of American political possibility, the family that rose from immigrant roots to the pinnacle of power, inspiring generations with their vision and charisma. Others emphasize the price they paid for that power, highlighting the repeated tragedies that punctuate their history. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a story of a family that achieved extraordinary heights while bearing an extraordinary burden. What remains clear is that the Kennedy legacy is far from over. The family's story continues to evolve, reflecting the changing nature of American politics and society, as newer generations find their own ways to contribute to public life. The bloodlines of power established by Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. persist, adapting to new challenges and opportunities. The Kennedy family's political influence has not vanished but transformed, adapting to a new era where legacy and symbolism often outweigh direct power. Even after the fading of the golden age of Kennedy presidencies and tragic assassinations, their name continues to carry weight within the American political landscape, inspiring both admiration and scrutiny. One significant way the Kennedys have maintained influence is through persistent involvement in democratic politics. While no family member has captured the presidency since JFK, several have held congressional seats, diplomatic posts, and leadership roles within the party. For instance, Joe Kennedy III, the grandson of Robert F. Kennedy, served as a U.S. representative from Massachusetts, carrying the torch of public service into the 21st century. His youthful energy and emphasis on social justice issues exemplify how the family's commitment to political engagement continues in new forms. Similarly, Patrick J. Kennedy, son of Ted Kennedy, served in the House of Representatives and became a leading voice on mental health issues. His advocacy helped bring much-needed attention to mental health reform, highlighting another way the Kennedys shaped policy beyond the glare of presidential politics. Both Joe III and Patrick's political careers illustrate the family's enduring dedication to service and reform, even as the nature of political influence has shifted. But the Kennedy family has also extended its reach beyond elected office. Through philanthropic organizations, advocacy groups, and public campaigns, they have influenced causes related to social justice, healthcare, education, and the environment. Their foundations, such as the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Organization, work tirelessly to promote civil rights and equality worldwide. These efforts demonstrate that political power can be exercised in many forms, not just through elected positions, but through activism, diplomacy, and leadership in civil society. Caroline Kennedy's diplomatic career exemplifies this broadening of influence. As U.S. Ambassador to Japan, she played a crucial role in strengthening international ties, advancing cultural understanding, and representing American values abroad. Her appointment showed that the Kennedy legacy could adapt to new geopolitical realities, engaging in soft power and international cooperation in an increasingly complex world. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s environmental activism has also been a major aspect of the family's modern political identity. His leadership of the Waterkeeper Alliance and vocal stance on corporate accountability reflect a shift toward issue-focused advocacy that resonates in today's political environment. However, his controversial views and political bids have also sparked debate about the family's unity and direction. Historians still discuss the evolution of the Kennedy political brand, pondering whether it can continue to thrive amid America's increasingly polarized and fragmented political climate. The Kennedys, once synonymous with hope, charisma, and youthful energy, now face the challenge of remaining relevant without the concentrated power they once wielded. Furthermore, the public's perception of the Kennedys has evolved. Once viewed through a lens of glamour, tragedy, and unassailable idealism, the family is now often scrutinized for its internal divisions, controversies, and changing political stances. This more nuanced image reflects the realities of any prominent political family navigating modern media and public expectations. Yet, the Kennedys' enduring presence in American life, whether in politics, philanthropy, or cultural symbolism, shows their lasting imprint on the nation's fabric. Their story is not just one of power lost or gained, but of resilience, adaptation, and the ongoing quest to serve the public good in new and evolving ways. As new generations of Kennedys emerge, the question remains: how will they shape America's future? Will they reclaim political power in a direct way? Or will they continue to influence the country through activism, diplomacy, and philanthropy? What lessons will they carry forward from the triumphs and tragedies of their predecessors? The answers to these questions are still unfolding, but the Kennedy name, synonymous with ambition, loss, and service, remains a potent force in American politics and culture. Their legacy is one of both bloodlines and ideas, a complex blend of history and hope that continues to inspire and challenge. Beyond politics, the Kennedy family has long embraced philanthropy as a vital part of their public mission. Their commitment to service transcends electoral ambition and is manifested in numerous charitable foundations, advocacy groups, and cultural initiatives. These efforts have allowed the Kennedys to maintain influence and continue shaping American society, even as their direct political power has waned. One of the most prominent philanthropic endeavors is the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Organization, established to promote justice, human dignity, and equality around the world. This foundation reflects the family's enduring commitment to civil rights and social justice causes championed by both JFK and RFK during their lives. Through scholarships, legal advocacy, and public awareness campaigns, the organization seeks to empower marginalized communities and uphold the principles the Kennedys have long stood for. In addition to human rights, the family has contributed extensively to healthcare, education, and environmental causes. The Ted Kennedy Foundation, for example, supports initiatives aimed at improving healthcare access and quality, a reflection of Ted's legislative focus on health reform during his Senate career. These charitable efforts underscore the Kennedys' deep engagement with pressing social issues beyond the political arena. Caroline Kennedy's involvement in education, particularly through her work with literacy and cultural institutions, is another example of the family's philanthropic reach. She has served on numerous boards and supported programs that foster cultural exchange and educational opportunity, continuing the family tradition of public service in new forms. Her approach combines respect for heritage with a forward-looking commitment to nurturing the next generation. Environmental advocacy also features prominently in the family's charitable portfolio. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s leadership of the Waterkeeper Alliance has helped protect thousands of miles of waterways, raising awareness about pollution and corporate responsibility. His work exemplifies how the Kennedy legacy has expanded to include environmental stewardship as a key priority, reflecting contemporary concerns about climate change and sustainability. Historians still debate how much these philanthropic efforts shape the broader public perception of the Kennedys. While their political tragedies and scandals often dominate headlines, their charitable work paints a fuller picture of a family committed to service in multiple dimensions. This dual image of public figures touched by tragedy but also driven by ideals adds complexity to their legacy. The Kennedys' philanthropic activities also allow them to influence policy and social change from outside traditional political institutions. By funding research, supporting grassroots movements, and engaging with communities, they have helped drive progress on issues ranging from civil rights to environmental protection. This form of influence is less visible but no less significant, offering a model for how powerful families can adapt to changing times. Moreover, the family's foundations often collaborate with other organizations, governments, and activists, amplifying their impact. These partnerships demonstrate the Kennedys' ability to leverage their name and resources to mobilize support for causes that align with their values. It's a testament to the enduring power of their brand and their commitment to making a difference beyond electoral politics. The Kennedy family's philanthropic legacy is also a means of preserving their history and values for future generations. Through museums, educational programs, and public events, they keep alive the memory of JFK's presidency, RFK's activism, and Ted Kennedy's legislative achievements. These efforts ensure that the ideals and lessons of the past continue to inspire new audiences. As the Kennedys move forward, their philanthropic work will likely remain a central pillar of their public identity. It offers a way to engage with the world that is both meaningful and sustainable, allowing them to continue their tradition of service in ways that resonate with contemporary challenges. This commitment to philanthropy enriches the Kennedy legacy, making it not just a story of political power, but one of enduring dedication to the public good. The idea of a Kennedy curse has lingered in public imagination for decades, casting a shadow over the family's remarkable achievements. This so-called curse, an ominous pattern of tragedy, untimely deaths, and misfortune, has become almost as famous as the family itself. From assassinations and plane crashes to fatal accidents and health crises, the Kennedys seem to have faced an unrelenting streak of adversity that some view as beyond mere coincidence. The term Kennedy curse gained traction after the deaths of Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. in World War II, President John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, Robert F. Kennedy's assassination in 1968, and the plane crash that killed John F. Kennedy Jr. in 1999. The litany of tragedies continued with other family members suffering fatal accidents, illnesses, or violent deaths. For many, These events painted a picture of a family haunted by fate, doomed to suffer despite, or perhaps because of their high-profile lives. Historians and skeptics often caution against attributing these misfortunes to a supernatural curse. Instead, they point to the immense public scrutiny, high-risk lifestyles, and sheer number of family members involved in dangerous careers or activities as factors that increase the likelihood of tragedy. In other words, the curse may simply be a statistical artifact amplified by intense media attention. Still, the curse theory endures, bolstered by the dramatic nature of the events and the public's fascination with the Kennedy narrative. It taps into a broader cultural fascination with tragic heroes and the idea that great power often comes with a heavy price. The Kennedys, with their blend of glamour, ambition, and heartbreak, fit this archetype perfectly. Some scholars argue that the Kennedy family's persistent tragedies reflect the immense pressures and expectations placed upon them. Born into privilege and power, each generation has faced intense scrutiny and responsibility, which can take a profound psychological toll. The public's relentless focus on their lives, often from birth, means that their personal struggles are rarely private. This unique spotlight may exacerbate the effects of tragedy, creating a feedback loop where loss feeds public fascination, and public fascination amplifies the sense of tragedy. Moreover, the family's involvement in politics, a field rife with danger, conflict, and controversy, increases the risks. The assassinations of JFK and RFK, for example, were direct consequences of their political roles in a turbulent era. The volatile climate of 1960s America, marked by social unrest, racial tensions, and Cold War fears, created a perilous environment for public figures pushing for change. Even accidents that might seem unrelated to politics, such as plane crashes or car accidents, gain greater significance because of the family's prominence. The media spotlight turns private misfortunes into public spectacles, feeding the mythos of a curse. This interplay between real risk, public attention, and cultural narrative shapes how the Kennedy story is perceived. Yet, it's important to remember that the Kennedys are also a family of extraordinary resilience. Despite the tragedies, they have repeatedly returned to public life, driven by a shared commitment to service and ambition. This resilience challenges the notion of a curse, suggesting instead a story of endurance in the face of adversity. The idea of the Kennedy curse remains a potent symbol in American culture, a cautionary tale about power, fame, and the human cost of political ambition. It invites reflection on how society venerates and scrutinizes its leaders, often at great personal cost to those individuals and their families, whether viewed as fate, coincidence, or consequence. The Kennedy curse encapsulates the tragic mystique surrounding one of America's most iconic families. It serves as a reminder that behind the grandeur and influence, there lies a deeply human story marked by vulnerability, loss, and the complex interplay of history and destiny. The Kennedy family today represents a blend of enduring legacy and evolving identity. While the political dominance they once enjoyed has diminished, their cultural and symbolic significance remains powerful. Descendants of the original dynasty continue to influence public life, albeit in new and sometimes unexpected ways, carrying forward the family's tradition of service while navigating a very different world. Caroline Kennedy stands as a pillar of this modern legacy. As a lawyer, author, and diplomat, she has upheld the values of public service and diplomacy in a quieter, yet meaningful manner. Her tenure as U.S. Ambassador to Japan marked a significant chapter in the family's international engagement, reinforcing the Kennedys' reputation for shaping American foreign policy in subtle but impactful ways. Caroline's work in education and cultural exchange further broadens the family's influence beyond politics into social and cultural realms. Meanwhile, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has charted a complex path. His environmental activism has earned him both admiration and controversy, reflecting the multifaceted nature of the Kennedy legacy in today's politically polarized environment. His outspoken views and 2024 presidential bid illustrate how the family's political engagement adapts and shifts with changing times, challenging traditional expectations while maintaining a commitment to public issues. Other members of the Kennedy family contribute in varied ways, from philanthropic efforts addressing social justice and healthcare to involvement in the arts and business. The family's reach is broad and multifaceted. They are no longer solely defined by electoral politics, but by a wider commitment to influence and service across multiple domains. The family's evolving identity is also shaped by the challenges of maintaining unity amid diversity of views and approaches. Public controversies, differences in political stance, and personal choices have sparked debate both within the family and among the public. This dynamic reflects the complexities faced by many prominent families in the modern age, balancing tradition with individual expression. Historians often view the current generation as custodians rather than conquerors, preserving the ideals and memory of the Kennedy legacy while adapting to a world that demands new forms of engagement. The public fascination with the Kennedys persists, fueled by their storied past and ongoing contributions, but also by a recognition that their influence now operates in subtler, less overtly political ways. The family's legacy is thus a living one, shaped by history, but responsive to the present. The ideals of public service, social justice, and resilience remain core themes, even as the methods and arenas of influence evolve. This adaptability ensures that the Kennedy name continues to resonate, inspiring new generations while confronting the realities of the 21st century. In reflecting on the Kennedys today, one sees a family that has weathered immense storms, yet continues to engage with the world's challenges. Their story is far from finished. It is an ongoing narrative of power, service, and the enduring human spirit. The bloodlines of power they represent are not just about political office, but about the capacity to shape ideas, culture, and society across generations. The Kennedys remind us that legacy is not static. It is forged in the crucible of history and redefined by those who inherit it. Their journey, marked by both glory and grief, continues to captivate and challenge, offering lessons about ambition, sacrifice, and the costs and rewards of leadership in a complex world. The story of the Kennedy family is ultimately a story about power, its acquisition, its exercise, and its consequences. From the ambitious patriarch, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., to the newer generations stepping into public life today, the Kennedys have exemplified the complex dance of privilege, responsibility, and risk that accompanies great influence. Their bloodlines are woven through the fabric of American history, marked by moments of soaring achievement and heartbreaking loss. As you trace the arc of the Kennedy legacy, it becomes clear that power is never without cost. The Kennedys paid dearly for their public prominence, with personal tragedies that have often overshadowed their political victories. Yet, it is this very combination of power and vulnerability that has made their story so compelling, one that resonates deeply because it is both uniquely American and profoundly human. The family's ambition was nurtured by Joseph Sr.'s vision, a desire to create a dynasty that would shape the course of the nation. His relentless pursuit of political dominance laid the foundation for a legacy defined by charismatic leadership and public service. JFK's presidency was a bright and shining moment, a symbol of youthful optimism and progressive ideals. His assassination, along with the later deaths of RFK and John Jr., cast a long shadow, feeding the myth of the Kennedy curse. Yet, through the decades of tragedy and turmoil, the Kennedys persisted. Ted Kennedy's decades-long Senate career, Caroline Kennedy's diplomatic service, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s activism showcase the family's enduring commitment to making a difference in the world. Their story is one of resilience, a refusal to be defined solely by loss, but rather by the ideals and causes they champion. Historians continue to debate the Kennedy legacy. Was it destiny, coincidence, or consequence that shaped their path? Was the family's power a blessing or a burden? What lessons can be drawn from their story about the nature of leadership, sacrifice, and public service? These questions invite reflection on the broader American experience, the hopes, the challenges, and the costs of striving for greatness. In many ways, the Kennedys embody the paradox of American democracy, the promise of opportunity, coupled with the realities of risk and loss. Their bloodlines of power remind us that behind every public figure lies a private life fraught with complexity and vulnerability. The Kennedys' journey through triumph and tragedy offers a mirror to the nation itself, reflecting both its ideals and its imperfections. So, as you think about the Kennedy dynasty, remember this: it is a story without a simple ending. It is ongoing, filled with new chapters, new challenges, and new hopes. The bloodlines of power they carry are not just about political office, but about the enduring impact one family can have on the culture and conscience of a nation. And now, as the story winds down, let yourself breathe. Imagine the quiet halls of Hyannisport at dusk, the soft rustling of leaves, the distant sound of waves gently lapping against the shore. The Kennedy's tale is one of light and shadow, ambition and sorrow, power and humility. Take comfort in knowing that no matter how turbulent the past, the future remains unwritten. The legacy of the Kennedys lives on, not just in history books, but in the hearts and minds of those who continue to believe in the power of service, resilience, and hope.